Who were Hamza al-Dadou and Mustafa Turaya? According to their friends and Instagram accounts, they were two young journalists trying to make their names in Gaza. Hamza had pedigree, wanted to emulate his father, Wael al-Duda, the Al Jazeera bureau chief. Mustafa was the go-to person for getting drone shots in Gaza. According to the Israeli Defense Forces, though, the young men were dangerous terrorists, members of groups that are, quote, actively involved in attacks against the IDF. On the 7th of January, with pinpoint accuracy, an IDF drone targeted the car they were in, killing all but one of the people inside. Along with eyewitness accounts and footage from the day, we've tried to piece together who they were and why they died. In the early hours of Sunday morning, an Israeli airstrike flattened this house on the outskirts of Rafah in southern Gaza. There's a heartbreaking routine to what happens next. Groups of journalists arrive, interview distraught relatives of the dead. The journalists trying to help people fully comprehend included those working for Associated Press and Reuters, along with al-Dadou and Turaya, both working for Al Jazeera, Turaya as a drone operator. Freelance journalist Yasser Kadai was with them.
وصلوا متأخرين لهذا عشان هيك ما طولوا يعني كل الطيارة ما طلعت إلا 4 دقائق بس وما عليت كتير.
But then, as the journalists were leaving, the first of 2 Israeli drone strikes.
فجأة واحنا نطلع من المكان على باب المكان ضربوا صاروخ استطلاع قريب منا. احنا فكرنا يعني مش استهداف انه خلص انه يعني المكان خطير وانسحبوا. انسحبنا من المكان طبعا كنا ورا بعض 3 سيارات.
A journalist filmed the immediate aftermath of this strike. No one is killed, but people are injured, like this man who was put into an ambulance along with corpses retrieved from the original bomb site. Now the ambulance, followed by a car full of journalists, is on the move towards a hospital in Rafah. Minutes later, the person filming inside the ambulance captures a second drone strike. This is the one that kills Hamza al-Dadou and Mustafa Turaya. The ambulance stalls. The occupants can't get out at first. Panic ensues. The person filming captures people running back towards Hamza and Mustafa's car. A crowd gathers around what's left of the vehicle. Hamza, Mustafa and the driver are killed. Incredibly, a 4th person, called Hazim Rajab, survives. The key question: was this a pre-planned intelligence-led operation, or were the Israelis reacting to a drone being flown in the area that morning and then targeted the operator? Initially, Israel's defense forces said it had identified and struck a terrorist who'd operated an aircraft that posed a threat to IDF troops. They did not specify the nature of said threat. On Wednesday, the IDF released a statement claiming that both al-Dadou and Turaya were members of Gaza-based terrorist organizations. They included a document they say shows Hamza al-Dadou's name on a list of people who've received payments from Palestinian Islamic Jihad. The document shows his name under the heading Electronic Engineering and a payment of $224. Mustafa Turaya, they say, was a deputy squad commander in a Hamas battalion in Gaza City, but provide no evidence for this.
Actually, I was shocked to see what the Israeli army published. First, they are known as journalists inside Gaza, and they don't need to be anything else. This is my personal opinion because I know them.
Are you saying that there are question marks over the documentation that the IDF presented?
For us, as a syndicate, we say this is a fabricated document. Hamas or Jihad or anybody, they're not that stupid to write this document. Why Israel never even showed this kind of paper with any other person they assassinated?
In 2016, Al Jazeera broadcast this documentary called The Human Behind the Camera. Hamza and his father Wael, the Al Jazeera bureau chief, are filmed together in several scenes. The Qatari-based media group has described the Israeli claim that Hamza and his colleague Mustafa were terrorists as false allegations and part of a campaign to target journalists, which Israel refutes. Hamza's funeral on Sunday. His father Wael tries to comfort Hamza's wife. His son is not the only family member Wael has lost to an Israeli strike. His wife, 2 other younger children, and his grandson were killed in October. Again and again, an abiding image of this war. Press flak jackets on body bags. The Committee for the Protection of Journalists says 72 journalists have been killed in Gaza since October. That would make it one of the deadliest conflicts for the profession ever.
Well, earlier today, I spoke to the Israeli government spokesperson Elon Levy about that attack, as well as Israel's defence against South Africa's genocide case at The Hague. And I asked him first whether the 2 journalists killed on Sunday were being tracked and targeted, or whether it was an opportunist killing because they had put up a drone.
You're calling these people journalists, but these were 2 terror operatives who were operating a drone in a war zone. We know that one of the individuals was a member of Hamas's Gaza City Brigade, in fact, a deputy squad commander. The other one was an Islamic Jihad operative who worked for its electronic engineering corps. Now, we've not only said that, we've also released intelligence.
You have only said that.
No,
this is your word, and Al Jazeera deny that.
We have not only said that, we have also released a scan of an Islamic Jihad list, listing one of those journalists, a scan that we presented to your producer team just before going on this interview, and we hope that you'll be able to show this on screen. Look.
But there's great scepticism about those sorts of documents. People say that they're made up, fabricated, and they don't believe them.
In Gaza, not all people who present themselves as being journalists are indeed journalists. Many of them are Hamas and Islamic Jihad members. Now, of course, we are targeting Hamas and Islamic Jihad. We're going after the terrorists who perpetrated the October 7th massacre.
So were they targeting
another one?
That's the point.
We are targeting Hamas and Islamic Jihad members. And in this case, we had 2 individuals our intelligence know are operatives of Hamas and Islamic Jihad operating a drone in a war zone in a way that endangered our soldiers.
So are you saying that anyone who puts up a drone to cover the aftermath of a bomb attack, I mean, drone footage is a common thing in journalism around the world. Are you saying that if you put up a drone, then you are a terrorist target?
We are saying that any member of the Hamas Gaza City Brigade, we are saying any member of the Hamas Gaza City Brigade, as one of these so-called journalists was, operating a drone that puts our journalists in harm's way, will of course be a legitimate target. And by the way, Krishna, we know that Hamas has a deliberate strategy of passing off its operatives as civilian operators. We know, for example, from interrogations of hospital
you know, but
managers,
you don't offer evidence for this. This is just sort of rhetoric.
That's not true. We have, for example, evidence. No, we have, for example, evidence from hospitals. After the director of the Kamal Adwan Hospital confessed to being a brigadier general for Hamas, that many of the operatives inside the hospital who are being passed off as doctors, nurses, many are, and they have nothing to do with Hamas, but many people are indeed operatives of Hamas military and Islamic Jihad military facilities. That is part of Hamas's deliberate MO. It takes its civilians and it takes its militants and it passes them off as civilians because it knows that it's then going to generate very sympathetic media attention that's going to put pressure on Israel to stop its campaign to bring them to justice after the October 7 massacre.
So there is no regret for the fact that more than 70 journalists have been killed in this war so far?
Christian, every civilian casualty is a tragedy, but every civilian casualty. We have no apologies for targeting Hamas and Islamic Jihad operatives who are planning a new October 7 massacre. I've seen that list of these 70 journalists.
There's a big difference between you saying somebody is sympathetic to Hamas and somebody is planning a massacre.
We're
You have
not
no
saying-
evidence that either of these people were involved in planning terrorist attacks.
I'm sorry, Krishnan, we are talking about card-carrying members of a terrorist militia.
What do you mean
that on
card
October-
carrying? What do you mean card carrying? That's a phrase you use a lot.
One-
Are you saying they were carrying cards saying I'm a terrorist?
Well, it would be nice,
it's a silly phrase to use,
if
isn't
the
it?
terrorists identified themselves as such. But one of these journalists was a member of the Hamas Gaza City Brigade. He was a terrorist operative.
According to
now,
the
I don't
IDF,
know,
which
Christian,
has a
and
track
the
record of
other
saying all
individual-
sorts of things that aren't
The other
true.
individual was a member of the Islamic Jihad's Electronic Engineering Corps. We
Again,
have
according
produced
to the IDF, which
and-
often says things that turn out not to be true.
And you are quite welcome to put on screen the image that we have shared and to factually corroborate that and independently verify that, which is perfectly all right and is your job indeed to factually verify that. And we hope that international media will be more skeptical of claims that Hamas is making, that just because Hamas says someone is a journalist or other people claim that, believing the lies of the terror organization that on October 7th burned, beheaded, raped people and has spent every day since then lying about it.
Okay, so I mean, it's clear that you are not really expressing any regret for the numbers of journalists who've been killed because you're saying half of them aren't journalists.
We regret every civilian casualty. We think it is tragic that so many people have died because Hamas decided to launch this war. Krishna, we don't.
But you're saying, what number of the more than 70 are you saying were terrorists?
I have seen from perusing the list at least 20 who are listed as being Hamas-affiliated media, which is, of course, as preposterous
What does
a
that
statement.
mean?
Well, this is Hamas-controlled media. It would be as preposterous as saying ISIS-controlled media. This is an internationally prescribed terrorist organization. You cannot be both a member of a terrorist organization and a journalist. I think you would expect that's a fair assessment.
Well, no, I'm just interested by what the definition of affiliated is. I mean, do you mean that any media organization that supports the Palestinian cause within Gaza is a terrorist-affiliated media organization?
Anyone who is an operative of an internationally prescribed
Operative
terrorist
is one of those clever
organization.
words that you use that sounds sinister. Let's just talk about people or journalists. Or,
Krishnan, I do not know the specific circumstances in which these people were harmed. We think it is very important, however, for the media to exercise more scrutiny about the information that they are getting out of Gaza.
And you don't think the IDF should exercise more scrutiny in who it kills?
We are targeting Hamas and Islamic Jihad. And
But by your own admission, it's a minority of journalists who, by your definition, are affiliated to terrorist organizations.
Krishnan, I'm not
So
familiar
most
with
of them were innocent.
I'm not familiar with the case of individual people. Now, of course, journalists get hurt in war zones. They get hurt in war zones because they operate in dangerous areas. Now, we are very serious and committed to exercising the principle of distinction between terrorists and between civilians. We do not target civilians. We have gone out of our way in this war to get civilians out of harm's way. That's why we postponed a ground invasion by 3 weeks to facilitate an evacuation of northern Gaza, secured the humanitarian corridor, designated a safe zone. We don't want to see civilians being hurt in this war that Hamas launched and is choosing to wage out of civilian areas in violation of international humanitarian law.